Hey, what's up? This is Ring Analyst Videos, and thank you for listening. And for this video, I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why the WWE does not want to create stars. Okay, this has been a big topic as of late. I think about a year ago, Stephanie McMahon spoke about the need to create more stars in like some conference call or an interview, and yeah, it seems to be kind of like the talk of the town as of late. And for a couple years, there has been this theory floating around that the WWE purposely goes out of its way to not create stars and prevent particular wrestlers from getting too over. And I guess it's this whole idea of like a jilted lover, where maybe he or she, they had a bad relationship in the past, and they don't want their current partner to kind of like get too lit, to get too brand new, because they fear that they're going to leave them. But anyway, I'm going to go down the 5 reasons why this might be true. Number 1, Vince loves power more than competition. So, as we've seen with WCW and things like that, we know that Vince can compete. That doesn't mean that he likes doing it, though. That doesn't mean that it's his first option or preference. And again, he loves power more than competition. And yeah, when we really look at this, there is some facts to back this up. Let's look at how the WWE became what it was in terms of when Vince first took it over from his father, bought it from him. He put out the territory. He destroyed the territorial system. He bought them all out, acquired their top names, put them out of business, and then, ruthlessly moved to try to monopolize North American wrestling as much as possible. So, he didn't sit comfortable with having all these different territorial wrestling promotions sitting within a wider ecosystem in the USA. He didn't like the idea of like, I can compete amongst these different territories, and then, we can like trade different wrestlers from promotion to promotion, and we can work together to kind of have like different, specials and events. He wasn't interested in that. He wasn't interested in working with other promotions like what AEW and Ring of Honor and others do. He just wanted it all for himself. So if you think about it in that way, in terms of him loving power more than competition, why would he, in a way, why would he want micro competition coming from different superstars within his roster? Because the moment you get the bigger stars who have that leverage in terms of they've got that star power, they have that mainstream recognition, that's going to be leverage on their side. And that's going to potentially work against Vince and the company in terms of, salary payments, the kind of like shares in pay-per-view buyouts, them trying to exercise some kind of creative control, or using their leverage to exercise creative control. And we've seen things like this happen in the past. I think one good example was the Ultimate Warrior, when there's those stories about how he essentially held Vince at ransom about being paid more money right before the match started so he could get more money. So that is like a kind of competition in a way, in terms of, Vince would have to compete and work more in terms of salaries, payments, benefits towards those top superstars in order to keep them. And maybe he would just prefer to have the power and to keep them in line, rather than, I've got this big star, he or she's a big draw for my company, but they're giving me a headache. He prefers the peace of mind that comes with control over the hassle and bother that comes with the explosive growth of having these stars. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, there are documented cases of him trying to snuff out, trying to control and manage wrestlers' stardoms. And this is not just a kind of hearsay or trying to connect the dots together to an extent. You've got different wrestlers going on record talking about this. We had like Roddy Piper, for example. When we think about him and, when he was a big name in the 80s, and, Roddy Piper was one of the more well-recognized over figures. He was popular, even as a heel. You think about, WrestleMania 1 with that celebrity tag team match with Roddy Piper and Mr. T versus Hulk Hogan and whoever was on his side. Like, he was one of the big names to kind of launch that all. And there's an interview that he has with Howard Stern where he speaks to Howard Stern and he simply tells him, like, when he was approached for the movie that he was the lead star in, which is They Live, which is a popular sci-fi film, fairly popular. And I think it was directed by John Carpenter. Like, it was like a popular, respectable film. It wasn't like these, typical movies that you would associate with wrestlers being in, where it's just some kind of B-list movie, failed attempt at a blockbuster. It's a cult classic, They Live. And when he was approached by it, he, went to Vince McMahon to ask for, permission and his blessing on it. And Vince McMahon was like, no, this, that role and those movies are not for you. Maybe, Hogan can do it, or one or two others, but not you. Why would you not want that to happen? Why would you not want one of your wrestling stars to star in a big movie like that? Kind of points to, again, trying to manage their rise. Then you look at other examples, even with The Rock, when he first started kind of breaking out into Hollywood in the early to mid 2000s, from what I know, he was still contracted to the WWE up until 2005. Because you remember, he did make a wrestling appearance at WrestleMania 20, and that was, WrestleMania 2004. So the story with that is they just allowed his contract to expire. They didn't, and this is The Rock that we're talking about. And, he was making movies at the time, but he wasn't quite where he is now. And, they just let his contract expire. Nobody approached him about it. And it was something that, in a way, I think slighted The Rock. And I think it was part of the reason why he was a bit hesitant to work as closely with the WWE as he does now for a couple years. Because it was like, what message are you sending out with that? Like, here's one of your top stars of all time who's made you so much money and like created so much goodwill for the WWE, and you just let his contract expire. And I think the kind of theory, the idea behind that may have just been like, Vince and, whoever it may be, the powers that be, they wanted to let his contract expire. And, I guess it was their way of kind of showing him, hey, you're not too big for us, like trying to knock him down a few pegs or two. And maybe they were partially betting on his acting career to kind of eventually go pear-shaped, and then him, without a WWE contract, would come crawling back for, a new contract to wrestle in order to kind of make a living, and then they can, negotiate him down. Because why else do you explain just allowing such a top star's contract to expire? So again, you have that situation where they're playing mind games, trying to, send out a message, whereas you could have actually approached The Rock, signed some kind of new agreement with him where you could, get him to make one-off appearances, wrestle in the odd matches here or there, and help you make money and keep so many eyes on your product. We could have gotten The Rock versus Cena a lot earlier. The Rock versus Rey Mysterio, Shawn Michaels, so many of those different matches. But for whatever reasons, the WWE didn't want to go in that direction. So that's another case in terms of trying to keep wrestlers in their place and send them a message, trying to snuff out their stardom. And then you've also had a similar situation with Batista. Batista's also spoken about that, where he spoke about how, they weren't really checking for him, and it was like they didn't really believe he was gonna really kind of get big in acting. Again, similar thing with CM Punk, where yeah, he had a similar experience to Roddy Piper, where you have him in his Art of Wrestling podcast interview, where he talks about how, you know, he constantly got offers for movie appearances, for cameos at like different UFC matches while he was on top in the WWE, and the WWE would always turn it down. You know, why would you do that? Again, kind of goes back to sort of managing their rises, not wanting them to get too big for their boots. And then, you know, we even have a current case at hand now, and that's with Sasha Banks. Like, think about this. Sasha Banks is one of the kind of featured actors. I know she doesn't play the biggest role in the TV series, but nonetheless, like, she's promoted in it, and a lot of people know that she's in it, and this is The Mandalorian. You know, Sasha Banks' role in that TV series. Like, and it's the type of thing where you only really hear about it because people watch The Mandalorian. Like, where's the WWE talking about this? They haven't said a damn thing about the fact that one of their top stars is somewhat got a significant role in one of the most popular TV series in the whole of America. The Mandalorian is a very, you know, highly streamed, watched show. And why aren't they promoting that? Why aren't they integrating that into storylines and talking about how Sasha's this big movie star? They ain't said anything about it. But then, you know, Becky Lynch can do a guest appearance in a show like Billions, which is has nowhere near the same kind of recognition and following as Mandalorian, and she gets, like, you know, a WWE special on their YouTube channel, and she's the talk of the town for it. And even in that case, I think that they only did it because Becky Lynch made an appearance as herself. So then it was like tying back to the WWE. So yeah, you have this situation where they only want, it's like a game of musical chairs. There are only so many musical chairs that the top stars can occupy. They only want a certain number of top stars at one time. They don't want too many in one go for whatever reason. And I think that goes back to, like, leverage and control, because that's like a current example with Sasha Banks and you know, Becky Lynch. So yes, these are all those documented cases. Then we have, like, what's happened with the fact that, the WWE's also kind of been burnt by having their top stars and their marquee names walk out on them, you know, use their leverage in a way that worked to the detriment of the WWE. And the best cases you have of this is, like, with Hulk Hogan, when he walked out on the WWE in the early 90s. Dude testified against Vince McMahon in the steroid scandal, ended up going to WCW and leading the Monday Night Wars that put WWE under pressure for a couple years. So that was what one big name was able to do. You know, even when, once Hogan left in the early 90s, the WWE, in terms of their product and their following, took a dip. You know, their pay-per-view buys took a fall. TV ratings went down. House show attendances was falling. They were losing money. And part of that was because of Hogan. He wasn't there. The big name, the franchise player, was gone. However, there's an argument to say that WWE put themselves in that position by, again, centering everything around him and putting so much of their attention towards Hogan and not creating, you know, many more additional stars. But yes, they got burnt by Hogan in the 90s, and then you had Rock, Stone Cold, and Lesnar in the early 2000s when they walked out, and then that's when we kind of, got to Cena, and going back to that thing of one top name and a casting kind of, a surrounding cast, a supporting cast. And again, even with Stone Cold and The Rock, we can say, yes, Vince was willing to like give these guys the torch and create these stars, but there's an argument that he only really did so because of the pressure and competition from WCW. So there's that. You know, he's been burnt by the whole kind of top names in the past. Then we have the use of scripts. Like, yeah, I think part of the reason why those scripts are there in WWE TV today is about control. You know, by creating scripts for these wrestlers to read off of, which is a change that they've had in place since the early 2000s, yeah, you can easily control and define their role. And in turn, that has a big influence on how over they can get or not. You know, it's like a movie. In the movie, there's a script, and the script dictates the influence and the importance and significance of the actors in the story. You know, if you have like lines scripted for the main star, and they have like, they're in so many different scenarios and scenes, they have more of a scope to get themselves over and to like, you know, make a mark on the movie. But then if you have like one particular guy who's casted in the film and all they've got is a one-liner, or they're made to do something goofy or stupid, that's going to influence how they're perceived by the audience and how well received they could be. So by using the script, you could do that. In the past, they didn't always have those, but yeah, since the early 2000s, those have been a thing. Then we also have to remember the fact that the WWE is now a publicly traded company, which in turn means they've gone full corporate. It's not an independent company. They're serving shareholders, and the shareholders of the stock markets do not like surprises. They like certainty. They just like things to be boring, stale, growing. No surprises. And the more control you have over these stars, and you know, you can manage their rise, it kind of lends itself to that model. So yes, those are the 5 reasons, or 5 and 1 additional, I don't even remember. But yeah, main reasons why, arguments you could say for why Vince does not want the WWE. Yeah, doesn't want to, why the WWE doesn't really want to create stars, or has a quota on how many stars they can create at one time. Maybe at most 2 or 3. Even 1 at times. And, you know, it goes back to the fact that Vince loves power more than competition. We've seen documented cases of him going out of his way to snuff out a wrestler's rise to stardom. Then there's, you know, the history in terms of like how the WWE has been like jilted and burnt by cases where their top stars left to go for other promotions, or either to go into movies or something else. Then we have the use of the script, and the fact that it is now a publicly traded company. It's not independent. They can't rock the boat. And letting these stars get over and have that kind of leverage can compromise that. So yeah, those are the arguments. Let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah, later on I'm going to make another video to say 5, you know, reasons why this may not be true, and the WWE does want to create stars, and it really is trying, but for whatever reason it's just not working. So yeah, let me know what you think. Sorry this video went for so long. I'll try to shorten them in the future. But yeah, you know, drop a line below. Peace.